And good evening. How you doing? This is your sensei Al Bob, and I welcome you aboard to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I want to tell you that this program on our channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, is here for your edification and pleasure. Right? And what is pleasure? Pleasure is the understanding of what's going on. Right? Entertainment is a whole different thing. Entertainment is like distraction. It's like the Romans had, bread and circus. We have big screens and fast food. And that's entertainment. That's Hollywood. Da Rudy Booty Booty Hollywood. Casting couches and all the rest. It's boo doo 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 Hollywood. What's Hollywood? It's magic. Every magic wand is made out of Hollywood. Hollywood. See that lightish light? That is that is the Luciferian light, the light giver, the illuminated one, you know. Whereas photonic light is love's co-creation's understanding. The it doesn't throw any shadows. Look at that light. Here, all these shadows, you can really never quite see because the shadows are there. They're always kind of flying above your head, the shadows. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about how, as I've told you before, I run my life by 3 rules. My grandma had 28. She gave them to me, and I use a lot of them. One of them is to live like a millionaire, but not to be one. To always, you know where you're coming from. Keep the 360 going. You know, put your field up and know what your 360 is. Um, what's another good one? Don't lie, cheat, or steal, because it's not worth the trouble. There's no upside. But my 3 rules, I only have 3. Grandma had 28, I have 3. And one is doctor, do no harm, meaning we're all doctors. We're all here to heal ourselves and heal all of those around us. But first and foremost, we do no harm. Look at that glow out there. Like you can see the Luciferian field. See it? See that field right there? Oh, that's the illuminated one. Illuminated. The illumination. The Illuminati. We all sing Hegelian I. And so we need to take care of our brothers and sisters. That's first and foremost. And don't do any harm. Be there. Listen. Support. That's what we're here to do. That's what a friend does. Doesn't blow people up. Doesn't make fun of them behind their back. Make them feel bad. Now, a true friend will tell you things that no one else will tell you. I've told this story a number of times. When I was 16, I was the dude. They called me the kid. And I was hanging out with all these people who were way older than me. And yet I was hanging right in there with them, right? And so I thought it was really hot stuff. And the bottom line was I realized after a friend of mine told me, and Carlton. And Carlton was the first Marlboro man. I mean, he's really handsome. I was his wingman at 16, twitchy. And one time we were sitting in his storefront. He had an antique store. He came from a family of antique dealers. and really old wealth. I mean, he never had to worry about a thing. And yet, he was the first Marlboro man. He was a Ford model. He was really good with real estate. He owned a ton of real estate. I mean, he was just really good with business. He was like, had the Midas touch, you know. And we did a whole bunch of business together because he liked that I had ideas. And he had the money, we did them, right? Anyway, so we were sitting in his storefront on West Broadway near Canal Street, and we were talking. It was a spring day, and we were kind of sitting on the loading dock, and people were going by, and there was a picture of him as the Marlboro Man right as you entered the Holland Tunnel, and there he was up on the billboard, and there we were sitting on the loading platform, and people walked by, and they went, "Hey Al, hey Al," and they were like, "Who's this? Your dad?" It's like, and he was starting to get a little, you know. Anyway, so I was like making fun and basking in the light of being the kid, the dude, and he goes, Al, and I said, "What, Carlton?" He goes, I really like you. You are my friend. You're the closest thing I've had as a friend for a real long time. And you are like 20 something years younger than I am, and yet we're on the same plane. I said, "Yep." Because we both went to prep schools, and we had a lot of similar things we could identify with. And anyway, so he said, "Don't be like me." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "When I was your age, I was just like you. I was the dude. I was the kid. I was hanging out with all these older people. Everything was, just I could, like, I didn't worry about anything. Everything just, was in the groove, all that. And now here I am." I said, "Yeah, but you're up on the billboard." He says, "Yeah, but nobody knows me. They walk by and they say hi to you, and the billboard's right there. There I am, but no one's saying, 'Hey, are you the guy up there?'" No, not a single one. And he said, "That's because I'm a scumbag, you know? Yes, all the girls think I'm cool. I can get laid all the time, da da da. But I'm a scumbag because I have sex with them and then I never call them. I never make any kind of. You're the only guy I have a connection with." Anyway, so he goes on and on and on about don't be like me, and being the Aquarian I am, that half my you know chart is in Uranus, so I'm always analyzing things. I actually listen. I listen to everything, and I kind of thought about it. I mean, I went home to my own little place and I read a book. I drank a beer. But I kept thinking about what he said, and that stuck with me, and still sticks with me. And so that's kind of one of those things that I measure. I frame my everyday, every moment. And I was trying to explain to someone about how you don't have to worry about anything. What can the things you worry about, you can't do anything about. So you might as well appreciate all the little beautiful things. Sunday, it was a beautiful day here Sunday. It was one of those perfect sky days, meaning got up relatively early, or was woken up relatively early, and let's go have breakfast. And never goes out to breakfast. So I said, okay. And so we did. And as we were driving down, because I kind of live in my car, so unless I really rearrange my car, no one else is going to be in it but me. But anyway, because at any minute I might have to leave and go someplace, so I kind of got everything that I need in my car. That's my closet. It's also my bed. I kind of crawl in the back and sleep on top of the bags of clothes. But it's all right. It's comfy. Most times I have you know a couch, a little bed, someplace. And in the deep green, hey, I got a nice couch. I actually have a couple of nice couches in the woods, and I found where I sleep. I have a nice sleeping lodge that I found a king size bed that somebody threw out, and it was still in its plastic covering. Meaning, whenever they bought it and whatever year they bought it, they never took it out of the plastic sack that it was in. And so they put, covers on it and blankets and all that kind of stuff, and people lived and died and crapped, but it never besmirched the bed itself, the mattress. A very nice Sealy's kind of mattress, king size. So I kind of put it out there and made a sleeping loft, and ooh, it is so nice. Anyway, so in the deep green, I have a really great place to sleep. But I can sleep anywhere. Like last night, I slept on my friend's couch, and when they all came home, I was in their living room sleeping, and the animals were sleeping on top of me. That was like my blanket, my electric blanket, with the cats and the dogs sleeping on top of me. And they turned the lights on. I didn't wake up. They were moving around and moving things and doing stuff, and then I just kind of said, "Oh, hey." And so I can sleep anywhere. And my eyes are much better now. Yesterday, after I got out of surgery, it was like somebody wrapped my head up in plastic saran wrap with Vaseline on it. Now it's clear. But Sunday, when we went down the hill, it was just crystal blue. I mean, and no one had done any spraying of the sky. There were no aerosols. It was like crystal blue. And 3 or 4 times as we drove down to where we were going to have breakfast, I saw things that were just, I connected with love's co-creation, and had that raison d'etre, that moment of wow, right? And I had about 5 of those until we came back here, and I didn't worry about anything because I was so enamored and focused on that beauty, and I kept trying to bring my friend to hey, look at this, and he would go on about whatever, and I didn't, I heard that from him so many times that, hey, I'm looking at this unbelievably God-given, once in a lifetime beauty. I'm not gonna I can always listen to that. This, whoa. So I about 5 times, about a 3-hour period, I had these like, look at that, and I kept saying, hey, look at that. And that's how I don't have any anxiety. I mean, yesterday, there were a lot of things, nothing went right yesterday. Even the operation, I mean, it didn't go terribly wrong, but, he shot some bubbles in my eye. So I was looking through these little lenses that were injected into my eye through being a bubble. And it was quite interesting because there were about 4 of them. And one was like a microscope, one was like a telescope, I mean, I could be looking this way, but I saw that way through the bubble. It was quite interesting. And because it had nothing to, it was like between the lens and the my retina, the way I looked at it really wasn't, it was like a phased array radar, meaning I didn't like move my eyeball to see that little bubble because it was like between those two things. I kind of had to use my brain and the optic nerve and say, I'm going to look at those little things that are just little, meaning if I just kind of look at the big picture, I wouldn't see them. But when I looked at the bubble themselves, but just with the X, Y, and Z cones in my head, in my eyeball, it was quite interesting because it was making my optic nerve and the cones and the brain and the this and the that kind of do stuff that you don't normally do, but it gave me a doorway into, it was like doors to perception, like Huxley's doors to, it was like, look at that. That's pretty cool. Oh, when they do the operation, I mean, they do give you a topical, but that they squirt on there, but it's more, I mean, it's not like your eye really feels that stuff. You don't really feel when they stick the needle in there. You don't really feel it. I mean, you see it, and the other interesting thing is like when they put it in there and they squirt the juice in there, it's like something out of Yellow Submarine. It kind of comes, you can kind of see, you don't see the needle in your eye, but you see the stuff squirt out and go all over your vision. and it's like something out of Yellow Submarine. Like I just did 3 tabs of acid, and there are all these patterns and really interesting stuff. And and they do it, and the lights are really bright when they're doing it. It's like the operating lights are there, because he really wants to see what he's doing. So he's done that before, and my eyes look like I'm the living dead. So anyway, like the first time he was coming at me with this gigantic needle, and he goes, "Don't look at the needle." I go, "What, you nuts? How do you not look at the needle?" And he explained how you do it. And he was the one who said, your seeing really comes from your brain, and if you kind of take it out of its normal process, just like when we go into state, and I do a guided meditation, I kind of guide you through that. You can guide your brain to do different things in your body. So he showed me how he could come at that, but I could turn off these optic nerves and just the ones from that eye. Or I could turn both the optic nerves off and just not really see anything. And so that's what's been interesting about this guy. He has, he's got a little different perspective, a way of, and the process that I have, that he does to me, he invented. He's a gazillionaire, meaning, he created the medicine and the process and everything. And if you're going to have some guy sticking big needles in your eye, you might as well have the guy who invented the process. And I just stumbled in there, and just by I went in there. I was, sent there by my HMO, and they said, "Oh, let's see. Oh, you had Dr. B. Go into room 4." I went into room 4, and he owns everything. He runs everything. He invented everything. He didn't tell me that, but we talked, and I could tell just by his aura that, yeah, this guy's in charge. And I'm just going, well, if you got to have this process done to you every 90 days, might as well have this guy. And so I basically asked about him, about everything about him. And I just kept going, knocking down the notches of where he grew up, what school he went to, how he got into this, what was his passion. So he got a family, what the kids like, what's the old lady like, what's he like to do, all that kind of stuff. And we just kind of, and by the time he sent me on my way, he said, I really enjoyed our conversation. I said, well, I'm glad. And then I said, oh, let me look at your palm. I read everyone in the hospital's palm. I just kind of went down the line, as I kind of went out. I just kept, and I'm like blind, like they, and I'm looking, and this one doctor goes, "You just had that process done to you." And I go, "Yep." He goes, "How can you read my palm? You can't even see it." He goes, "Well," I go, "it's a different thing. It's your energetics." And so, anyway, so it's an interesting eye hospital. They do things that most people don't do. They've invented all of their processes, and and anyway, the second time I went in there, he said, "Listen, I looked at your whole chart, and yeah, you can't afford this. You don't even have insurance." So he goes, "I need another guinea pig." And I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, this process, yes, it's been okayed, but I'm in that middle thing, and so I need to build a database on the effects of this. And you fit. You've got diabetes. You got this. You got that. You're a good. So why don't we trade? I'll make you a lab rat, and because you're on the protocol, you don't have to pay for it, right?" I said, "Oh, okay, sounds good." So, and that's pretty much how I have all of my medical procedures done. Is that I've enamored myself to the medical, practitioners, and I practice to them. I have this one podiatrist that I adjust his chi all the time every time I go see him, right? And he calls me up and I go see him, and he doesn't even take care. He doesn't have to take care of me. I don't need anything, but I'll go take care of him, and then he'll maybe buy me lunch. But I mean, that's how I live like a millionaire and not have to be one, right? And I don't worry about anything because, what's the worst that's going to happen to me? I'm going to die. And I've already died 6 times, so I know what it's like. So I'm not worried about what's coming next, All I'm doing is my best, In every second, in every day, in every way, I take the piece of the earth and I make it stronger. Anyway, I wanted to talk about, mental health, you know, because I was reading an article in the waiting room, and there's this like little lounge where the doctors kind of hang out, right? And so, everybody in this hospital knows me. So, I wait. So you have to wait in the general waiting room where they have 30, 40 people in that thing all the time. And they come in, they kind of do an eye exam, and then they put you in the dark room. It's a waiting room that's dark. And then they take you in. They have this machine that measures every aspect of your eyeball, takes pictures, does all kinds of things, looks at everything in there. And then they put you back in the dark room. And then they take you and the ante room where they kind of hit you with a ton of drops, all different kinds, antibiotics and numbing and this and that. And you go back into the dark room and they kind of put the sheet over your head, right? And then they kind of bring you back into the operating room, put you in the chair. It's just like Clockwork Orange, where Malcolm's in the chair and he's like, and they strap you in so you can't move anything, right? And they got these things so you can't move your eyes or your orbit, or you can't blink, you can't do anything. You're just like, you can't move your head, can't move your arms, your chest, your legs, you can't move, period. And then they go to work on your eyeballs, and you're awake. They don't knock you out. And because they're going through 10, 20 people every 5 minutes. I mean, he does something to your eye, he then goes to another operating room and does something to that eye, and then he goes to another operating and does something to that eye, and then he comes back to me. Anyway, instead of like doing something to mine and then waiting 10 minutes with me, he goes and does other things. So, anyway, so it's a very interesting. I mean, if you were a fidgety person or if you were nervous or anxious, you could not handle this. They really can't. You have to be able to just not get anxious, or if you are, that you control it. Anyway, so me, I just meditated. It's not a big deal. And he says I'm one of his best patients because I can, talk to him medically. The other thing he likes is that I make his staff, because every time you come here, you listen to them, you talk to them, you read their palms or their tea leaves or whatever, and they are more relaxed, more cognitive, more professional, more on top of it. You know, the next few days after you're here. And that's another reason I take care of you. You actually make this place work. You go and talk to everybody in the main waiting room. You get them all kind of relaxed. You're like that guy who warms up the audience before the comic comes out. Anyway, so that was yesterday. I went through that. And a lot of, the people I stayed with, their car didn't work and this didn't work. It was raining and, it was difficult. Nothing went smoothly. But, now today my eyes are fine. I don't, little bubbles have dissolved. And what was very cool, so yesterday in the afternoon before I lie down on the couch, I made dinner for everyone. And I made it because food is always, you make the food, it's really hot, and then you let it settle, right? And that's what I did. And before they left, they had a little bit, and then they went off and had, they left around 6, 7 o'clock, and I just lied down on the couch, and they came back around 11. And so they ate a little bit before they left, and then they came back and finished it off when they came back. And that's when I was on the couch. And but so from that period of when I got out of the operating room around 2 to 6 o'clock, after we ate and they left. Maybe they left probably maybe 7. Anyway, 6 or 7, somewhere in there. But from 4 to 6 or 7, I was playing with little bubbles. And what was very interesting, it was very similar to this experience. Yep, just don't be nervous. And I could move just like I can do this, right? If my intent is right, I can move the bubbles, right? But if my intent isn't right, it doesn't matter. So I was moving the bubbles around in my eye, and I was looking at them like the telescope, the microscope, and then the multidimensional bubble. It's like you look through the bubble and you would see a whole other little world. It was quite interesting. Anyway, so after they came back at around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we sat around and talked a bunch about all their projects and what they're doing, and they were showing me and wanting my little feedback, and because we are, they're part of the crew, they're part of the cadre. Amazing visual artists, and so my one friend, the mommy, she has went online and got all these very interesting images, right? That dealt with metaphors of freedom and what's going on. I talk about the dynamics of the open window, the opportunity and the coming together of all these trends that are millions of years long. And I've been, not just you guys. I talked to everybody about this, and she and everybody in the fam. I've been talking about this, for as long as they've known me, for the last 20 years. So anyway, she's working on a piece where she's gotten these pictures, these images, and she is going to paint them. She's a really good painter. And then either I or someone's going to photograph them, and we will do them in a way that it'd be like shooting them in Kodachrome so they can be projected. Whether it's digital or not, it doesn't matter. But it will be a reference of Kodachrome. And, Paul Simon's song, Kodachrome's are nice, bright colors. And we're going to use those images that she's going to paint from these images that are photographs, and we'll project them, in whatever mechanism we use, and we will have dancers dancing in the images, and we will have music choreographed for the dancing and spoken word. And so this will be a shamanic ceremony that will give the observer the ability to see, feel, hear that experience of love's co-creation. We're going to manifest in physical form through this co-creation because it's going to take probably 5, dancers, choreographer, composer, musicians, a poet, actor to speak it, technicians to project and light it, all of that. It might be somewhere between just me and her and a few other folk, or maybe a big crew. But anyway, and that's one of the things that, and that would be something that it would be a precursor to what the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology would do, right? That's kind of what it's about. So, they love it when I come over and sleep on the couch, because we don't watch TV, we don't zone out. We talk like this for 3-4 hours and then go to sleep. And then we dream, because these guys are meditators too. So they dream, and we dream in dream time, where we dream together. And they really like that. And the animals do it. It's all our relations, right? So that was, yes, I had it, it was pretty having to go through, it was rainy, it was really terrible, the people driving and coming from the hospital, going back to her place. And she's had to drive my car because her car wouldn't work. And my car doesn't, it just has me as the insurance. And it's kind of, if I'm in the car, I think it's kind of insured, but I don't really let other people just take my car and drive it. But she had to go do stuff, so I could have kvetched and worried the whole time I was in the operating room. What, did you got to crash my car? No, I just kept thinking positive thoughts that everything was going to work out fine. And it did, you know. But driving back from the hospital to her place, which was about a 10-mile drive through really nasty, rainy traffic on a highway, and everyone's cutting everyone off and, jamming on their brakes, and I couldn't see anything. So I could have been really anxious because she's driving my car, or I could just, sit back and breathe. And that's all I did. And that's where I started to come up with this, thing that we have to take care of each other. And if we were all in one gigantic big safety net of taking care of each other, we don't have to worry about anything, right? So, Sunday when I showed up there, I had about, $15. So I went and bought, a couple of squashes and a couple of sweet potatoes and a couple of onions and a box of pasta. And that's it. And I made them dinner for 2 nights and 4 meals, right? Make 2 breakfasts. And that when I go visit, that's I always bring food and make food for people. And then I clean, I go in their kitchen and whatever dishes that are there, I clean everything because I'm going to make a mess anyway. So I then finish that mess. So I always leave the place better than I found it. And I, you know, feed them. And that's part of Islam. That's part of Islam. If you read Quran, it's all about hospitality. Whether you're the guest and they're taking care of you, or you're the guest and you're taking care of them. It's this kind of hospitality motif. Anyway, so that's what I've been thinking about. And then I read this article yesterday before I went under the knife when I was in the outside the outside waiting room, not the dark waiting room, so I could read. My eyes weren't screwed up, and I could read. And my friend, she dropped me off and went and did all her errands because her car didn't work. And so I was, walked into the doctor's little library. They call it the library, but that's where they have their lunch. Anyway, I went in there and I went through the medical journals, and I saw this one that struck me about suicide. And in the United States, every second of the day, 4 people commit suicide in the United States. It's one of the highest, I think it is the highest suicide rate in the industrial nations. Now, there are other countries that maybe per capita have more because their population, they don't have 300 and something, 60 million people. But we have the most numbers of people who off themselves every day. And out of the 32,000 people who die from a handgun, 30,900 are offed by suicide, meaning the person themselves. Meaning it isn't a robbery, it isn't someone breaking in your house, it isn't, a violent thing. A suicide is very violent, but it's self-inflicted. But the thing about that violence of the suicide, it's like, it creates waves. So the first time that suicide really kind of got me was in our neighborhood. There was a Spanish family, and they were, everyone in this neck of the woods was pretty much middle class to upper middle class. I mean, there were people who had jobs in offices and, worked on the line, and they were making, in the 50s, 20-something $1,000. This is when you could buy a car, a GM or Ford car or Chrysler car, for somewhere between 900 and $2,000. Cadillac, $2,000. When my dad bought her gold 1961 Cadillac Eldorado It cost, I think, $2,200. Right? And he bought himself a Oldsmobile LeBaron. Anyway, and so that neighborhood was, people making 20 something grand a year up to 70,000. There were lawyers and doctors and professionals in our neighborhood too. And a few blocks down, that's when the social strata started, you know, going south. Anyway, I'm gonna get rid of this. And there was it was a Spanish family, and I think he was either a lawyer. He's a professional guy. They had a very nice house. They had a very nice car. They had three kids. We all played together, and we were all an interesting bunch of kids. Anyway, we're out playing around, and we hear the report of a gun. It was the first time I heard a gun, and it was so strange because it was summertime, and everyone had their windows open, and this person, you know, was a large caliber handgun, a 44, and it, and people started coming out and looking around and slowly figuring out where it came, and some this one my friend, he kind of twigged on, and he ran towards his house, and then his brother ran after him, and we ran after them. And then the grown-ups saw us running to that house, and they were right behind us, and the kids all got in there first. And this woman had put a large caliber handgun, like a 44 Magnum, big gun, and blew off the back of her, from here to the back of her neck, everything back here off, and sprayed it all over the back of the living room. She did it in a couch. She just kind of felt, and she didn't really show. She was almost standing straight up, and so everything above her, and all the blood and everything. So there was no blood or anything on the front of her face, but the top of her, everything above her eyebrows was gone. And we kind of walked in, and the kids saw it first, and the letter, and me and Teddy and the Smiths, we actually acted relatively, grown up and responsible, because the two kids who that was their mom, we all kind of hit the door at the same time, went down this hallway, went into the living room, and the two biggest guys and me and two other guys basically circled these guys and basically picked them up and carried them outside. And they were just like frozen, right? And then all the parents came running in, and it was really all of us kids who got in there first and saw this. We realized we didn't want to look at it anymore, and we didn't want our friends to see their mom this way. And we kind of, like I said, we picked them up and carried them out. And we were out the door onto the front lawn, and then all the grown-ups went in there, and they ogled it, And it wasn't, they stayed in there, and they, some people came out and threw up and ran away, but no one came over to us, the children, right? And Mrs. Werner, who didn't run to go in there, I don't know what she was doing at home, but she finally showed up, and she was the only person. I mean, she saw all the stuff. The cops were there. You were just getting there, and the ambulance was there. And she had been a nurse, and that's why she got along with my mom. And they both liked to smoke cigarettes and drink, so they were buds. Anyway, but they were from different class, so they didn't hang all the time. But anyway, they went to different parties. So Mrs. Werner's party was, her and herself in her kitchen, and my mom was a little more cosmopolitan. But anyway, my parents were not around, and I was the only one from my clan because these were my friends. And my brothers and sisters were older, and so they were either in school or doing something else. But we saw that, and so Mrs. Werner actually came over to us, and when the ambulance showed up, she went over to the most responsible in authority person in the ambulance, and I think one of them was the doctor. And he said, "You need to come over and talk to these kids." For the woman is forget that. He'll need a sponge and a fire hose. That's all she needs. But these kids need you. And he actually was pretty on top. He was a trauma doctor, so he understood trauma. So the two kids whose mom that was, he twigged that right away. He kind of wrapped them up in blankets. There were a few other people that, you know, they were affected, like, were representing like they were in shock. And the other three of us were just kind of taking care of our friends until the grown-ups became grown-ups. And so anyway, the doctor took those four, the first ambulance, took those kids to the hospital. Didn't take the lady, because the ME had to show up. The ME took the body away. And so the police were there, and the firemen were there, and the doctor and the ambulance took them away, or at least got them. He went with them too. And there was a nurse that I think was with him that stayed with us. And again, they then wrapped us in you know um, blankets, and they had a thing that was very similar to Gatorade, meaning it boosted up your electrolytes and gave you a few other things in there. And she had a couple of bottles that, we sat on the steps of a house a couple houses away. I think it was Mrs. Werner. Mrs. Werner was there, and this nurse, and we were wrapped up in blankets, and we sat outside because the air was sat down the backyard, and the sun was there, and the air was clean, and we sat on the back steps there, and then I stayed with Mrs. Werner, and she, we just sat there in the sun until the sun went down, and then we went into her house, and she fed us. And then my mom showed up, and so we went back to her house, and my mom said, my mom had heard what happened, and she heard that we showed up there before figured what was going on before the grown-ups could. And they just kind of followed, it was about 7 of us, 6 of us. So, and like I said, everyone else was, oh, huh, what's going on? I don't know. And other people screaming and yelling. And we were the only ones who were, going in a direction with a purpose. And so that was the first suicide I ever saw. And then I saw another death that was kind of surreal. About a year later, they were resurfacing all the roads in our neighborhood, right? And they kind of cut them up and put in new drainage and sewer lines and drainage for the storm drains, and put other things in the ground, and then they kind of regraded it and paved it, right? So they had this big, gigantic steamroller, no longer steam, but gigantic thing that probably weighed 20 tons and almost was wide enough to do the whole friggin' street. What they would do from the curb to a little bit past middle, and they'd roll that, and then they'd do the other side. Anyway, and so there was gravel underneath where they were laying down the blacktop. And so we were watching them do it, and that was kind of cool. And this one kid, and this was in the days when the cool bike had a banana seat, right? And this kid was, doing wheelies on his back wheel, and he was zipping around, and he was skidding on the blue stones, right? And the rest, and this guy was a jerk and a moron. And, we kind of, said, hey, Jimmy, don't do that. And the sound of the machinery was so loud, you couldn't even hear yourself saying, Jimmy, don't do that. Anyway, so Jimmy was like zipping around, and he lost his balance and skidded on the stone and went right to where the steamroller was rolling to. And this thing, the guy is way up in the air, and he's facing the other way, and he's going backwards and forwards. So he's backing up. He can't see that Jimmy has just slid, a foot or two before, and the big rollers come, and Jimmy's trying to get out of the way, and it rolls over the tires of the bike, and it squishes his legs underneath, and just keeps squishing and squishing and squishing. And Jimmy got squeezed like a tube of toothpaste. And it was, his head was the last thing to pop. And we were all watching that. The same group of kids who years watched the Spanish kid mom blow her top of her head off. And the reason that woman blew her brains out was that when she was in Spain, as a young woman, she was involved in the the Civil War in Spain, in the 30s, and then she was a mathematician, and after when that ended, she married an American guy who was in the State Department and came to America. And she was a really good mathematician, and she worked during World War II, like the Manhattan Project or something, dealing with the war effort. And she got a lot of she became an American citizen, and then she was teaching in a college, and because she was in the Spanish Revolution as a socialist or communist or whatever those guys were, the Senator McCarthy thing, she got fired. She got we find out that you're a communist, so you no longer can work in this university, and you're fired. And forget your career. You're not gonna ever gonna. She was trying to publish a thesis, and she just kind of got. You're now a person non grata. But she's, I'm an American citizen. She goes, doesn't matter. And that's why she blew the top of her head off. Now, she didn't think twice about her 4 kids or her husband or anybody else, but that is the psychosis of, um, of suicide. And those kids were never the same. I think a number of them off themselves. And the kid who got squished by the steamroller, I mean, that totally messed a lot of people up. I mean, that neighborhood was like, I mean, about 5 of those kind of bizarre situations occurred in that neighborhood. It was like something else was going on in that neighborhood. And my parents left, and they had the house, it was a perfect house for them. It was like the best house in the neighborhood. It was like the rich person's house back in the day before all the other houses were built around it. And and that's when we moved on to Old Brookville, and right on the border of Nassau and Suffolk counties, right in the middle, right near between Garden City and Glen. And there were 2 cities, incorporated cities in Long Island. One was Glen Cove and one was Freeport. Anyway, and Freeport we were in the north side of Freeport. That's where all this weirdness was happening. And and now Freeport's the hipster, scene, because it's really beautiful. It's like the Venice of Long Island, because it's a big village, and not only village. Back in the 17 and 1800s, it had a port. You could come, and it was easier to come into that port than to go into the Hudson, because it wasn't as developed. Whereas this place, and it was a very guarded port, and it was a big fishing village. A lot of the whalers came from there, because Long Island, in a lot of ways, especially eastern Long Island, was like going to New England. There were families that were, in Rhode Island. Rhode Island was just, across the Great South Bay from Shelter Island and and Montauk. So there were families that lived in Montauk and Rhode Island, and it was closer. It was a 5-mile boat ride across the water, where it was like we went all the way to Long Island, to New York, to Connecticut, and all that was like 700 miles this way, and just about 5 miles that way. So, Eastern Long Island, when I was a little kid, they had New England accents. A lot of people did, you know. So, um, all of Long Island was very strange. I mean, that's where Tesla put up Wardenclyffes. That's where RCA had its labs, and so did Bell. And that's where, Brookhaven National Laboratories and Plum Island and, Montauk, the Montauk facilities. And all of that eastern end of Long Island, from Islip all the way to Montauk, maybe a 300 square mile area, very weird shape, not a box, but, from Islip to Montauk was probably 70 miles. And then this way was probably, you know, 6 and 10 and 4 and 3. And anyway, because Long Island looks like a fish, the end looks like a fish, and Shelter Island is right in the middle. Anyway, there's tunnels and all kinds of caverns and all kinds of unbelievable crazy shit underneath all that. And it was started back in the 1890s, 1880s, 1870s. And they just, there's, you can't believe the crazy shit that's under there now. So when I was a kid, the crazy shit was already down there, for the last 50 years. They already had a good start on it. So, I saw a lot of weird shit on that end of the island. And that lady blowing the top of her head off, and she was kind of a high-strung person, but I could never imagine. I had dinner with those folks a couple of times, and played in their house in their backyard, and I never thought that that woman could blow her brains out, right? And Jimmy, getting squished like a tube of toothpaste. That was, that's a little sear in my head. But Jimmy was a guy that everyone could, would think of. We would talk about it the next year. That none of that family, the Smith family, because Allie blew his eye out. Bobby fell from a treehouse onto a picket fence. Um, Virtually all those kids either died from a very weird situation, like getting run over by a steamroller, or being, Bobby had like 4 holes in his chest from a picket fence because he fell out of a tree onto a picket fence. I mean, just between the age, and I was luckily, I only experienced from 7 to 9 was I in that neighborhood. My brothers and sisters were there from, for a good 12 years. Me, just because I was with my grandma in you know, another zip code. Anyway, so I had seen enough, stuff and talked to enough people about life and death, and I had died twice by that time, and been sick I died at birth, and from the umbilical cord being wrapped around my neck, and this young female doctor pushed the experienced male doctors out of the way and saved my life and my mother's, because they were trying to pull me out. I was a breech baby, and they were trying to pull me out with salad tongs, and the thing was wrapped around my neck, and I'm not going in. They're pulling harder and harder, and my head was going to, pop off like a tick in my mother's uterus, or they would have ripped the placenta right out of her, and she would have bled to death, and I would have been dead too. And this young female doctor realized what was going on and pushed them out of the way, put me back in the uterus, turned me around, unwrapped, and she had her arms way deep in there instead of using, surgical tools, but it was like salad tongs. And, she pulled me out. And these guys wanted to do, when I wasn't coming out, a cesarean. And my mother had issues where that wasn't going to be able to be done. And these guys are just going to do whatever fuck they wanted, kill me, kill my mom. They didn't care. And this female doctor in 1950, which is, almost the Stone Age of medicine, saved my life. So every birthday until I was 10, I got really sick. I get pneumonia, strep throat, laryngitis, you name it, everything that dealt with my esophagus. It And then at 10, I got everything. I got all kinds of. I was next to death, and we were down in Florida, and they put me in a Catholic hospital, and then went off to the beach. Didn't wait around, and I was watching the you know Wizard of Oz in a. I was totally. I had a fever 112 and out of my mind, and when the Wing and Winkies were coming for Dorothy, I thought they were coming for me. So I was screaming. So this nun came in and she was wearing the flying nun habit, and she leaned over me and I saw her and she, looked just like a Wing and Winky to me. And I took my right hand and belted her, bango. And I remember seeing this thing fly over me and this crashing sound, over here, stage left. And then I was out. And about 3 or 4 days, I came back to, and I was tied to the bed. My arms and my legs were restrained to the bed, and I had a cast on my right hand. So I really must have KO'd that nun. And they had a mask over my face like Hannibal Lecter, so I couldn't spit or bite or say anything. And I was in my own feces and urine. And they had, left me there, to punish me like, a good Catholic church would do. This poor little 10-year-old boy. And I couldn't, my fever had broke and I'm in this little pool of wet urine and, and, and little turds flowing in it. And I'm like, I can't say anything. I can't, I can just barely move my eyes back and forth and I can smell and it just did not smell right. And my parents hadn't even come to see me. And however amount, whether it was 6 hours or 2 days, but I'm thinking, I'm saying to myself, I am never getting sick again. This is it. Never, 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 never am I getting sick again. I'm just thinking, never. I'm getting out of here and I am never getting sick. That's it. I'm not going to be the sick kid anymore. I am going to, no longer going to be the peanut. And just as I'm saying that, my parents walk in, and my mother goes, "What the?" And looks at me, and I'm tied to the bed with this thing on my head, and I'm swimming, I'm floating in my own urine and feces, and she has to, she just because she has to administer hospital, so she tears these people apart and gets them to clean me up and she just takes well he has to no my mother said you leave him like this I'm not leaving my boy here and she just kind of wrapped me up in a blanket and walked out holding me in her arms to the car going you'll hear from our lawyers. And my mom, wherever she was in charge. She was a triple Capricorn and she ran hospitals and she was connected Cardinal for a godfather, right? Cardinal Cushing. He was like, he looked like Bela Lugosi in a woman's dancing dress. Anyway, I mean, he go on YouTube, Cardinal Cushing. You'll really, and that guy was my freaking godfather. So, she carries me out, and I have one of the best times of my life because my family, I mean, they came in to get me because the next day they were going to get on the airplane and fly back to New York. And we were staying. My father was the grooviest executive of this paper company, and so he had sold the most stuff, so he got to spend, the winter in Florida. And we were only gonna. He had it. He could had it for a couple of months, and we only were down there for the 2 weeks of whatever holiday that was from Hitler's Rifle Squad. That was the name of the Catholic school, HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad, and so they, everyone went home except my mom and her best friend Aunt Gracie and me. And the house was in Pompano Beach, and it was right on the Atlantic Ocean. And it had a pool, and it also on the other side was the intercoastal, so it had a place to put a boat. And I mean, it was a great house, and it was like in the jungle, crocodiles and things always were like walking through. I mean, the house was like, yes, it had a door and windows, but things just kind of crawled in and out of this place. And it was great. It was really. The crocodiles were like my pets. Anyway, so we spent 2 weeks there on the beach, and I was the man. He's our little man, and they'd go out to really fine restaurants in walking distance and get totally sloshed and walk back, and I'd be in a suit. They'd be holding each of my arms because I could barely walk. And that was some of the best times I had with my mom and my Aunt Gracie because they just let loose. My dad and the rest of the kids, and nobody that they had to, take care of or impress or worry about what they said or what they did. And they just had a wild, crazy, good old time like they did when they were the hot stuff that they were in the 1930s in New York. And so that's some of my best memories of my mom. The 2 or 3 weeks that we were there, and every day took a month. I mean, every day took so long, just slowed. We had nothing to do. Everything was kind of in walking distance. She had a car. We take little road trips here and there, but we had nothing to do. No itinerary. No, my dad always had things to do. We're gonna go see the biggest ball of string. We got to drive 300 miles to see the. My mom, not so much. She just sat, by the pool and drank her Manhattans and smoked cigarettes and read novels. So that was like some of the best of times with my mom and Aunt Gracie, and that set a protocol, especially with my Aunt Gracie, because she was a great aunt. She was my mom's best friend when they went to nursing school, and then. And Aunt Gracie had this way to endear rich men to herself, and she taught my mom how to do that. And so, but my mom was, she was like triple Capricorn. She ruled. Aunt Gracie, not so much. She was what was Aunt Gracie? She was a Scorpio and a Virgo, and what was her other sign? What was her moon? Oh, might have been a Cancer, might have been Pisces. And she had a good chunk of herself in Aquarius. So she and I, connected on our little Aquarian. I was a real Aquarian, and she had a lot of stuff in Uranus and Aquarius, and I have a lot of stuff in Uranus. And so and she was like Auntie Mame. I mean, she always took care of all of us, but I stayed a lot. She had a great little apartment in Manhattan. In what was the name? It was right across from the United Nations. It'll pop into my mind, but it was like an apartment about the size of this room, and her bed was. She had a Murphy bed that kind of came down, and she had a kitchen that she pushed a button in and would come out of the wall, and and it was built by an insurance company. So whoever the architect, everything was, had a beautiful. There were 4 buildings around, and it was like it was elevated on a hill, and so you came off of First Avenue, came up, and that road that you know went to all these buildings only went to those buildings, right? And it had underground parking. This thing was built in the 20s. Half the buildings looked at the East River and were right across the street from where the UN was. And there was a big park that only the people in those buildings could go in. It was very beautiful, had bushes and sweet smelling flowers every a year long. And it was a greenhouse there. What was it called? It'll pop into my mind. Anyway, and when my Aunt Gracie died, she left me that. It was a rent controlled apartment. She paid $7 a freaking month for it, right? In 1970, right? And she had put my name on the lease. And when she died, I was, in Europe, I think. And my mom was her, you know, she was the thing of her attorney, she was the head of her estate. And my mom, my Gracie gave money to lots of us. My mom put all the money in her pocket into her account. And she sold that rent control apartment. And in the thing, it says, Albert's getting this because he's going to live in New York, and a $7 rent would be good for that boy. And my parents did stuff like that. They never wanted to make my life that easy. I never, I mean, I didn't think about it. So it never, that didn't have the power that it did on my other brothers and sisters because all my siblings worked for my parents until my parents died. And me, never. So my mom just, I didn't realize that until one day when my parents were dead and I was cleaning out their Florida house. And I went through this box of papers, and there was my Aunt Gracie's will, power of attorney. That was it. And then there was this thing that my mother had registered, and she was the power of attorney, and she put all my Aunt Gracie's assets into her accounts. I said, and that's what my mom did. And she could have kept that apartment because about a year after that happened, and I didn't even know about that apartment until like 30 years later when or 40 years later after my parents died and I was going through those papers and I saw that. My mom could have kept that $7. She could have had her own friggin' apartment in New York because they went back to Long Island and moved out east where they built their factory. And, you know, she would have liked to have had a nice little place to go because every time they went into New York, they had to get a big, expensive, fancy Waldorf, motel hotel room. Anyway, I mean, but that's every family has these maturations of weirdness, right, and situations, and it's it kind of alchemically goes together to make who you are. And I was very blessed to be um, charmed and also extremely innocent and naive, which I still am. Because when people say mean and cruel and nasty and stupid things to me about me, it like kind of goes right over my head. It really doesn't do that unless you know how you dip an animal. So I'm quite sensitive. Yeah, not so much. But if they are energized through fear and hate and self-loathing, I feel that big time. So that's why I'm quite sensitive to people who commit suicide or talk about it or want to be it or any of the above. And I've been working in the medical scene and as a shamanic healer and all that stuff for almost 40 years, 45 years, 48 years. I've been around a lot of it. It was an EMT for 3 years. I saw a lot of death. Um, and it's very interesting because I've died so often, I've kind of realized that it's not a big deal. Like Buddha says, it's slipping out of a slipper, right? But collectively, it has a energetic cost, weight on the families that are involved, and also as all our relations. So um, that's kind of what I want to look at tonight. So, okay, there's 5 of you there. It'd be nice if we got maybe 6 or 7 or. Twitchy, ride. Not a cloud. Yep, to be seen. Yep. Really like one of those special days. Of course, it felt weird But I was more interested in when I really kind of looked at those bubbles and I was seeing other like dimensions in those bubbles. That was so I wasn't like weirded out or scared or any of that because the guy said, "Oh, yeah, that's what that is," and you'll see that bubble there for 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. Now they're gone now, but last night, between 4 and 6, it was like having a dimensional window, like three of them. It was quite interesting. Did Jamie ever get back on this chat? No. And I've tried to, I went to where he made a comment and tried to get on his email and say, hey, be part of this. So life is terrifying. See, but if you put it in the context that, why kind of reincarnation makes sense is that, okay, so you get run over by a steamroller, right? Well, you come kind of pop, just like the toothpaste shooting out of there. Your soul goes shooting out of there, and goes into something else, and you won't do that again, or maybe you will, because it's like Kenny in South Park. Every episode he dies, and the guy who got flattened, his name was Jimmy. Every person I've ever seen, you know, pull the karmic dharmic straw of that nature is either Kenny, Larry, Billy, Timmy, Jimmy, all males, first name ending in Y. So think back, all those Y's that you guys ever knew, they fit that, the real jerk, the person who always fell out the window and, broke something or, sneezed and he snapped a vertebrae in his neck or, you know, it was really, I mean, when I was EMT, every time I'd see like a horrific, unbelievable, it was either Jimmy, Timmy, Bobby, Larry. It was like the rule of the Y. You know, just don't be nervous. I don't think they have a YouTube, but I bet you, if you were to look at eye surgery, and where people are injecting something into the eye, I bet you they might have something about that. I mean, YouTube guys, go look at that thing. What do you call it? Oh, your pick list, or I wrote it down to tell you, playlist. So you go on my channel, right, and you go to the control bar up there. It says channel, movies, this, that, and the other. There's a thing, playlist, right? And about you, playlist, right? Go hit my playlist because I have about 300 and something um, YouTubes that people have sent me that I've watched that are really the bomb. And there's about 10 ones that run, with, meaning there's a guy named Jimmy Dore. He's amazing. I love that guy. And then there's another thing, Grace, Good Grace, or something Grace, like the grace of, the attitude Grace. I don't think that's her name. She is quite brilliant and really produces extraordinary video, YouTubes that are just off the hook about what's going on, about everything. She's just not in. She's just not about the Illuminati or the reptile. I mean, she's about history. She's about science. She's brilliant. She's, she's got a great, funny voice too that I love, because it's like this voice of endearment, and so she goes on about these heaviest of heavy um, of subject matter, and it's her voice is so so you can like listen to like the stuff that might want to tear your hair out. But then there's a guy, I think it's called the Crow House, that or Crown House or something like that. But anyway, they're on there. You can see them. And the other guy I really like is an English guy that does the HBO show This Week Tonight. He's really hilarious. Because I lived in England and I knew guys that had that kind of sense of humor at the pub, and but he's smart and he really picks his battles. And let's have a little conversation about what you want to do. So I've been talking about suicide and death and transformative social dynamics, and we should be taking care of each other. That's what the beauty of the cadre, the beauty of the chat is that this group is ridiculously diverse, beyond diverse, right? There is not even a shred of any kind of tribalism in these chats, right? And even when the trolls show up, we're nice to them, and that runs them straight off. That BB dude, he tries to, and he can't, he says a few kind of things, and people go, "Oh, honey, how you doing? How was your day?" And they just can't deal with that kind of sweetness when they're trying to be, just totally nasty. And so that's the beauty of the cadre. And so, what do you want to go view tonight? Any ideas? Jane, Twitchy, anything? Mr. Ride? Actually, I have no idea what gendered Ride is. For the longest time, until I met Twitchy, I thought Twitchy was a tall black basketball player. Now, the only thing I really pick up from Jane, do you have a dog? You're a dog girl, aren't you? You have a dog. Old vlog dog lady. Okay. I picked that up. So in the next few days, I'd love it if everyone could go to my channel and go to my playlist and start looking at like I said, there are about 10 characters on that playlist who and virtually their channels are kind of like this, meaning they aren't tribal in nature. They speak to interesting things that matter on a deep, deep level, and all of them. There's three of them. There's this old woman who, she's like the old crone's daughter. She's probably in her 60s or 70s, and she has been, born into paranormal everything. And she has a scholar. She's been a scholar, so she has this way of doing research. Same as the young girl, Grace. She's probably in her late 20s, 30s, and that girl's a scholar. The way she does research, she is outstanding. And the way because she writes a script and then basically learns the script, and she either reads it and she has images that she edits into it, or she does a live thing. I think she might even do live chats. But she basically, I kind of do a stream of consciousness. She has a script. When she does that semi-live thing, where she goes in it and going over and over and over. So she has the information in her, and she just speaks it in a shamanic, energetic way. Like I said, she's got this beautiful sounding voice. I just, she's telling you stuff that is like, I can't believe this shit. And yet, because her energetics is, she's a shaman griot too in her own talented way. And pretty much the 10 people that I'm talking about that, and if you go to my playlist, and I will watch one of their things one after another, and then I'll, in their stream there'll be somebody else, and I'll look at them, and there'll be two or three of them, and that's why I got 300 and something of those playlist things, and they're all really must see. I mean, it isn't like some guy, catching his nads on a doorknob, or a thing going on about how to brush your teeth, or paint your tires black, or no, it's like, whoa, it's like, I need to know and understand this information. So that's why I put that playlist together, because I wanted you, my cadre, to see this stuff, because it will enhance and enlighten you, and we can then have even deeper conversations, and then we can have even deeper, remote viewings, guided meditations. So, unless someone has something really deep and interesting to go on, again, I'm going to start. This is my new next stylistic change, and that is, the story isn't just going to be a stream of consciousness. There was a real thread here. The thread was about life and the catastrophes of life that are all around us, that we can either be mulled over by them, like Jimmy being rolled over by the steamroller, or you can learn something from it. You can, the woman who blew her brains out, God knows what she had to, what dharmic lessons she had to go after the next time around, because what she had, left, the catastrophe, and strewn emotional crap that was in that house. I mean, they moved, but they did not stay there after that lady blew the top of her head off. They didn't stay in that house. They left. The kids, they left. The parts unseen. Whereas the Smiths, where half their family died in that neighborhood, within a 6-year period, they stayed there. So that's how unconscious they were, you know. And Mrs. Smith was like probably happy that all her boys were that bunch of morons that they died that way. I mean, I can't, no, I won't say that, because I don't know, because Mrs. Smith was always, in an altered state. And a lot of the wives in that neighborhood were in altered states. So, anyway, the chat has to be more of a reciprocating thing, where you guys enter in this conversation here, more with, hey, how you doing? Hey, cadre, little emoji, sounds cool. Just don't be, a little more deeper than that, where you have to give me something I can have a purchase on to take it to the next realm, right? And the same thing with the guided meditations. You at least have to give me a place I can take you to. I've been just kind of, it's like I've been the driver ed teacher. I've been, the majority of these guided meditations have more record what your lodge is, what are the 9 doors, what's the fireplace, what's this, what's that, what's your in your sanctuary of your own choosing. And I lay down the parameters of set metaphors, like the meadow, like the tree of knowledge, the tree of life, and the the Great Lake of the Link and the gazebo and the fun house and the carnival and our house. That's the Oracle of Delphi, and the long, the hedgerow long house. And these are all, I'm just, as your Griot Sensei Al Bob, I am, showing you the way and giving you the access to the tools. But to do more with these tools, you have to practice. You have to go into state yourself. Now, I'm keeping my body alive. Why? I can see even better than I did yesterday. Yeah, the operation does help, and I wouldn't be put myself through that if I didn't, because I can see energetically that yes, it's actually helping my eyes. So, in all the stuff I've read about this process, yes, this is good. And then I'm in a portion. Majority of this process was designed to keep you from going blind from macular degeneration, right? But it wasn't there to heal the stuff that already, and that's one of the problems with diabetes and neuropathy and charcoal legs and all the other stuff I have is, John says, well, if you eat a more healthier, I eat a pretty healthy diet and I lose weight. Like I've lost 23 pounds since September. And that's the way to lose weight. Pound here, 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 and not gain it back. And, but none of all of that good stuff that I'm doing and walking, because when my legs were in metal clamps and I was walking around with a walker, my legs were degenerating, atrophying to the point where they were going to have to cut them off. So I have to walk around, I walk around until I can't, so I sit down. And then I have to get up and walk around, and then I have to sit down or lie down, right? So, when you treat your body poorly for X amount of years and things, go south on them, if your organs, get damaged, if your bones dissolve, if things, stuff like that happen. Well, outside a miracle from Jesus, you know, um, you know, the best you can do is stop the deterioration and make things stronger so you can move forward. And that's what I've done. Now, with my eyes, I actually, because I am a lab rat and they study me very carefully, not just give me the procedure and do the general kind of look at, but they really do. Every time I go in there, they stick me in all kinds of machines and document everything and take pictures of this, that, and the other thing. It's pretty cool how they can take pictures of every square centimeter of the inside of my eyeball. And I get to see all that kind of stuff. And so I can visualize what I should be trying. This is what's wrong with this is where it's wrong. See how those little nerves are this and see. They actually show me, so I can visualize them healing. Anyway, between my visualization, my meditation, and the process that they have, I am in this category of only 5%, where not only is it stopping me from going blind, it is my eyes are actually getting better. And they're not operating. The next step would be, you get to this place, now we'll operate and go in there and scrape this crap out and fix that thing. And my eyes are still getting better without the operation. Because, at my age, putting me down and then like cutting my eyeball and pulling it out and scraping on the inside, he said, when you're young, your eye can actually get better from something like that. Your age and the damage, I wouldn't suggest this. But this procedure that we're doing actually is doing what the operation would do. And he goes, that's like 3% of the 100% of people who get this. So whatever you're doing it pretty, and that's what my endocrinologist tells me. You're the healthiest dead guy I know. So anyway, that's what I have to deal with. And, I'm all ready to show you guys how to do that. And I do, when we go into, when I have you visualize, breathing in the prana and all the things you're doing to your cell structure and your mitochondria and illuminating yourself with photonic light, not Luciferian light. These are all very important things. And that's why you should be practicing them 5 to 10 times a day, all day long. And once you get really, I can go into state. Like right there, I was in state. And you know that you can do that too. So once okay, I'm going to do that again. And this time, I'm going to try through the screen to bring the 6 of you into state without having to go through the whole guided thing, right? Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm there now. Are you there? You can respond on the chat. And if you're going into state right now, I have already gone, into Akashic Record, and I've already gone into a different land. I want to show you that land. And this land is where you go when you commit suicide. And I'm not going to describe it because I want you to describe it to me. The 6 of you, see how good you can, remote view. If you've known anyone who has committed suicide, right now you can go see them and talk to them. See it clearly. Okay. If you're in state, you can communicate on the chat. If you come out of state, tell me what you've just seen. Yeah, John. Come on in.
You're doing a video?
Yeah, everyone's in.
Hey.
We're in a state and we're looking at where people go when they commit suicide.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I come in?
Sure, close the door so it doesn't get cold. So everyone is experiencing what you go through when you commit suicide.
Oh, hi. What are they experiencing? Just
I
stuff?
talked about a few people who I knew who committed suicide and what happened to them. And because I'm always concerned about people who talk about suicide, because I don't
think happens.
Well, there's a responsibility. So I never told you this story, but I was telling them when I lived, when I was a little boy with my parents and we lived in this neighborhood, this woman blew the back of her head off with a 44.
Oh, it's terrible.
And she had been a college professor, and she was Spanish, and she was in the Spanish Civil War. Did you ever hear the Spanish Civil War? 1930s?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
When the Nazis went against the Nationals, and the Nationals were communists. Anyway, so she had been involved in that, because she was a young 20-something-year-old, and she, fought the Nazis. Anyway, during the McCarthy period, she was a professor, and she lost her job and her career and everything just because back in the 30s she was fighting the Nazis.
Oh, that's terrible.
And Senator MacArthur, so she got blackballed, and she couldn't take it. So it was like a cannon. It was summertime. Everyone's window. The echo of that, it was like a cannon. It was all over the neighborhood, and everybody heard it, but nobody knew where it came from. And 2 of my friends knew that their father had this big gun, So they ran and we ran with them, and there was about 6 or 7 of us. And all the other people, the parents and everybody were like, "What was that? What was that?" And we were like running down the street. We run in the house and we go in, and there the mother was sitting on the couch, and the whole back of her head, from her eyebrows and all of this was gone.
Wow. Are you
And
filming yourself now?
no, you.
Okay.
And it was.
He says this part of
I already
everything is all
told them.
gone.
I already told them the
Oh,
story, so
man.
they know what it was.
Well, I've been going through some difficulty with they want me, if I want to be able to see my own children, I'm supposed to travel to Texas for the seventh time. The seventh time.
So
And
why can't you just go? Just get on the
because
airplane.
I'm not like you. I'm not as social of a person as you. And literally one time driving across country had me so worried I couldn't follow the GPS, and I started driving back and forth across the whole state. And I was driving for 30 hours, didn't get any sleep, and had to be hospitalized. And then I found that if I just fly, that's easier because I'm not having to drive a car. And I didn't even get the GPS set up back then. I'm not sure if it would be different, but I had been worrying for weeks on end. Are my kids okay? I couldn't see them. And then maybe I can just get on the plane because when I get on a plane, it's easier, but it's still, there's no promise I can be around her and the boys and the baby. That's more comfortable.
Is there anything you can do that
She,
you can get a positive
yeah,
experience from this?
from going to Texas,
Yeah.
there'd have to be something selfish in it for myself other than just being there to make sure my kids are okay. And there's nothing really else in that whole city that's that great. I mean, it's an okay city, but it's like just an average American city. There's nothing in particular about it that's like really interesting to me that I would want to go on vacation there, other than my kids are there and I have to go. So,
Why do you have to go?
and it's caused me to be very depressed for months now, and on and off for a
There's
couple of years
nothing.
since I've been there.
There's no place. I mean, you're a
Been there almost 2
musician.
years.
You're a writer. You're a painter. You're a filmmaker.
I haven't
You
been
live in
doing
a
it.
beautiful artist school. There's nothing here that can, give you a distraction or you
I
can.
can't move forward and get excited about life. I'm not excited about getting in shape or achieving any goals or working hard in anything because I miss them so much every day.
Then why don't you just go there and stay there, and manifest at least a relationship with you and your boys?
Because it costs money, and there's nothing I can imagine doing enjoyable besides being with them and doing stuff that's fun. That's fun. But the thing is, now she's pretending I see them.
Yeah, but they are your sons. You got divorced. You have legal rights. They physically took them out of state. That's like against the law, you know?
It's kind of against the law. Yeah.
I
And
mean, you have rights, and your boys
her
are getting,
excuse is
they're
she
going to be
wants to say,
teenagers soon. They should just come here
yeah,
and live with
they
you.
should just come here and live with me. Her thing is that she's researched how she can get the rights to have the kids and not have them with me, and she tries to say that I'm crazy. That's her one thing, but the only depression I have is from her taking them away.
Right.
And there's nothing else wrong with me. I used to have some anxiety, but it's not enough that I couldn't
But
watch
these aren't
kids.
neuroses, I mean,
It's the
these
same
aren't
as
psychoses, they're neuroses. Everyone's neurotic about something,
it's the same as it's always been with on those issues. But she used to let me watch them all the time alone while she would go if she had to go out somewhere. Usually we were always together. We were always together at home usually or going places together. And then so I don't know what to do about it if I should go there or not. But it's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to really go all the way out there.
But I mean, I'm going to drive to the airport. You just walk
Yeah.
to the, gate and get on the airplane and then get off in Texas.
Well, I have to switch planes. I have to constantly look at the people around me for hours. Um, it's not as calm feeling. I mean, it's like I'll literally have to be on a plane for seven, like traveling for 7 something hours, some stranger in an Uber when I get there, and then get to some condo where I have to stay at this guy's house that like her dad owns the other house, this condo, and they put one of their relatives in it, and I have to like live with him. And then it's not like home at all. It's like some place staying with that guy. And then if I see my own children, it's like it's just kind of frightening and scary. It's not like my own house or comfortable, like my own house. But maybe it'll be okay. I don't know. It's just kind of
If you
terrifying
can put yourself in a
sometimes.
positive motif. I mean, you went there one there, you went out to
By
dinner,
the
you went to the
time I
movies.
made the by the time I made the plane flight back on the seventh or the sixth trip back, I was doing this and stuff and like going just it was I could barely make it back the whole time. It was horrible. It was horrible. That was the sixth trip back on the plane flight. I was like going I was doing this and stuff. It was like terrible. It just felt awful.
Now we've
Some
tried.
people don't like to be out there a lot around other people unless it's or a movie that I want to watch or some movie that I think is really really cool. And that's the thing. There's this movie I want them to all see together, and I see the trailer for it. It's like this new Disney movie,
Uh-huh.
and I've cried about it and stuff because I want to show it to the baby, and it's really sentimental and like as far as well, it's really significant as far as I saw the movie when I was a baby before it got
You
remade.
talking about Mary Poppins?
No, it's this other one.